Hey, Book Bastion boy, are you cheating on me?
No.
Maybe next time I'll think before he cheats.
Whew. Sorry I had to see that. But welcome to episode 3 of Brian's book, Bastion. Now, this episode is going to be fairly short, but I wanted to ask a question to the literary community that seemingly everybody has an opinion about, and that's, are audiobooks cheating? According to goodereader.com, the number of audiobooks produced has been going up every year from 20,000 in 2013 to 36,000 in 2014 and 43,000 produced in 2015. They also mentioned in their next year analysis that sales for audiobook retailers grew in 2016, but not necessarily for the publishers. And I'm not quite sure what the correlation there is, but I think that could be a good subject to tackle in a future episode. But the question for today is, as popularity grows, how does the community at large feel about both readers and non-readers adapting to this new technology that's really disrupting the literary industry at large? In other words, are these listeners cheating? There was a piece in the New York Magazine that highlights a University of Virginia psychologist, Daniel Willingham, after he published a book in 2015 about the science of reading. He argues that if you look at the mental processes that are involved in both reading a book and listening to an audiobook, those mental processes are practically the same. Now, there are two processes that occur when we read: decoding and comprehension. Decoding being the translating of the string of letters into words that actually mean something to us. Comprehension relating to us figuring out how the words form coherent sentences and how those relate to the story at large, etc., etc. So the process of decoding is specific to reading a physical book. But the thing is, by late elementary school, most of us are so used to that process that our brains practically don't have to do anything extra, so we can focus on the important things.
Recess.
What that leaves is comprehension. That means that regardless of the medium that you choose to use for your reading, your brain will still be going through the same comprehension processes. Now, there are, of course, other arguments for and against audiobooks. For instance, a narrator will often put their own emotional interpretation into what they're reading. So, if they're reading a character that they perceive to be sad, you're automatically going to perceive that character in that situation as sad. But if you were to read it and pick up other context clues, you might personally see that character as angry. The flip side of that is sometimes the narrator will pick up on those emotions that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. And when you listen to a book as opposed to reading it, you could get a whole new meaning out of something you've read before. Or of course, if it's the first time, you can kind of get those emotions as they're reading it to you in that moment. The second example is with vocabulary. When you're listening to an audiobook, you don't get a chance to see a new word spelled out in front of you. You may hear it for the first time and it sounds new, but you don't get to put that audio recognition with a visual recognition, and therefore it might be more difficult for you to learn a new word. Or even if you have the best intentions, like all of us do, to look it up later, you might not be in a situation that you'll remember that in a couple hours because you'll already have been more immersed in the book that you're listening to, or you just get busy with the rest of the day. And for a lot of readers, that's why they read in the first place. So you could see why that could be a definite negative for audiobooks. At the same time, a lot of readers get caught up in words that they don't know, and that can mess with the flow of their reading. And for a lot of people that struggle with reading, that's a reason for them to stop. And so audiobooks can get them into this process where they're enjoying the stories without having to worry about the stop and start of figuring out what exactly they're reading. There are an endless amount of pros and cons for audiobooks, and we could go on forever, but I will just say I personally love audiobooks. I had a commute for the last 6 months that was over 30 minutes, and so I got to throw on classics that I would have probably never picked up in any other situation, And because I had them in an audiobook, I got to finish them in a timely manner. But I will clarify here at the end that for the 2017 reading challenge, I will not be doing audiobooks. And it's not because I have anything against them. I just want to have that tethering feeling of having a book in my arms.
Aww, that's cute.
What are your thoughts on audiobooks? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Why do you feel the way you do? Leave them in the comments below. I'd love to continue the conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a week for the full review of Tools of Titans.
That's for whatever.